Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to take a look at the Transformers Legacy Evolution Wave 3 Deluxe class Axlegrease. Let me know what you think of this figure in the comment section down below. Is it a pickup or a pass? Now let's take a look at the figure's packaging. So here we have the packaging. Starting at the very front, we have Transformers on the side. We have the Legacy Evolution logo at the bottom. We do have Axlegrease in white text with a white Decepticon symbol. We have an open nose displaying the figure in the packaging. If we do turn to the top of the box, there's actually a QR code. If you do scan that, they'll show the stats. On the side, we have a close-up of Axlegrease's head and chest, and moreover, a wide battle shot of Axlegrease with all of her weapons. On the back, of course, the figure transforms in 17 steps. There's several product shots showing off all the pieces, the Evo Fusion gimmick, her robot, and her alt mode. And on the final side, we do have half of the Legacy Evolution artwork, so if you do get another deluxe such as Beachcomber or Defcon, you can put both boxes together and complete the artwork. And that is pretty much it for the packaging, so let's now get into the review. So here we have Axlegrease in her robot mode. Let's take a look at the details, starting at the very top with the head sculpt with some really nice pink for the visor, some white for the top of the head. We have some really nice silver for the face and some gunmetal gray for the sides of the head. We have some really cool spikes and boxes for the shoulders, done this really nice dark blue. We have some really nice kind of pinkish maroon color for the forearms and the chest, and we have some really nice turquoise blue for the hands and the bicep. I do love the chest with all these really cool angles and spikes done this really nice silverish gunmetal gray with some more of that pinkish purple for that Decepticon symbol. We have some really nice dark gray for the waist with more of that kind of pinkish maroon or purple for the top of the leg. So we have some really nice spikes on the side of the legs, again done in that really nice pinkish purple with some dark blue for the main base color of the leg. We do have some really nice wheel detailing on the side, done in that really nice turquoise blue and pink, and some really cool spikes for the front of the feet, done in that really nice gunmetal gray and some metallic blue for those headlights. That'll mostly come into play later for the truck mode. And if we do look at the side view, overall pretty well compact, not much sticking out, but I've never really been a big fan of these huge long heel spurs. Probably they could have toned that down a bit, maybe made them a bit more compact. They kind of stick out a bit too much for my liking. But as for the back itself, overall really well filled in where the back of the legs and arms are concerned. There is a bit of a backpack, but it really doesn't bother me appearance wise, but it being that hollow looks a bit odd to me from certain views and angles. But that is pretty much it for details. So now for articulation, I do have to say, if you own the original use or version of this mold, that being Scraphook, if you didn't already know, this is a repaint retool of that figure. Quite a few new pieces, but with articulation, it is pretty much the exact same thing. So the head cannot look up or down, but it can look side to side. The arms can move out and in, forward and back. There is a bicep rotation, really loose on my copy. There is an elbow bend, again, quite loose on my copy, but there is a really stiff wrist rotation. If you do move the arms out of the way, there is a waist rotation all the way around, completely unhindered. The legs can kick forward, back, out to the side. There is rotation at the top of the knee. There is also a knee bend to about a 90-degree bend. And there is also an ankle pivot in and slightly out. And there's also a pivot forward and back. So pretty good articulation. Really no complaints there. I do have a complaint where tolerances are concerned, especially where the arms are concerned, as you just heard me say, with the elbow bend and the bicep rotation way too loose, which is a bit odd actually. I guess it's just kind of a random copy sort of thing, because with Scraphook, there was no tolerance problems, but especially on my copy of Axlegrease, where the elbows and the bicep rotation, they are so loose, especially where whenever I'm transforming this figure, they usually pop off a lot, where the forearms, they just randomly pop off. Whenever I'm posing and maybe just keeping, the figure on a shelf, they never really pop up. Whenever I'm messing with the figure, unfortunately, they do. So hopefully not all the copies are that way. Maybe it could just be kind of a fluke. Maybe it could just be mine, but all the other joints, the legs, the waist, the head, really nice tight joints. The shoulders, it's just that one area that could be a bit better. But as for accessories, since this is a Junkion, actually our first female Junkion figure, I'm pretty sure ever, she comes with a lot of accessories, some of which are actually similar and the same to Scraphook, but there is actually 4 brand new ones. So let's take a look at the same ones we've seen before. So we actually have these really cool kind of smokestack pipes, which are the same ones that came with Scraphook, just slightly in a different color. His were more of like a dark brown or kind of a dark silver. These are more just like a plain silver, which overall pretty cool. And you can store them in a ton of different ways. I'm actually going to store them mostly according to the instructions and how I like to do it, pretty much the same way I store them on Scraphook. But really, of course, there is so many MechTech ports across this entire figure. As you can see, there are some on the shoulders, the wheel, the hand. Of course, you can put them in the hand. There's some of the wheels near the legs. So really endless options and opportunities. You can really display them however you wish. I'm just going to show you how I do it. So you just store them. I typically do store them at the wheel. I think that just looks the coolest. I like to angle them quite high up. I think that looks really cool. You can imagine some huge flames, shooting out the back which is pretty crazy. And the other one is actually this little hook. So Scrap Hook actually came with a little crane to attach to it. We only have the hook, which this will attach to one of the new accessories, so I'll show how that works in just a sec. So for the new accessories, we actually have two identical blasters, and if you can already tell, these actually do form the huge engine block for the truck mode, so you can actually tab them together to form one big gun, or you can actually separate them to form two individual ones. I actually do not typically use these as weapons. I do store them on the front of the legs to fill in this space. Of course, this space is mostly used for the truck mode. I just think it looks the best to fill them in, because on their own, those huge ports there don't look the greatest, but if you want to use them as weapons, you can. I just really don't like the empty space there. It looks a bit ugly to me, so I like to fill them in with these weapons. I also just think it looks really cool to have huge, engine blocks on the front of the legs. I think that looks really awesome. Really nice scope work here. Some really cool kind of tubes, some containers like canisters, and we do have the little barrels sticking up forward, which is pretty cool. And if you are wondering, they are Blast WP's compatible. So for now, for the remaining two accessories, two identical blasters like those, probably could have used some more paint, really just done in that like dark gray color. A bit hard to hold on to, as you can see, but I do like this kind of dark energon color on the side. Maybe could have used some more on that on the top, or maybe some silver. Overall a bit bland, but you can, again, store these however you wish. But how the instructions show is you actually can store the hook on either one, really doesn't matter, but you can actually store it using the post and ports, and just plug that into place like that, and you can put it on, the forearm or on the hand. I typically put it in the hand, so now we have kind of a claw arm, or almost a lockdown, claw arm sort of thing, which I think is pretty cool. And as for the hook goes, that's really the only place I've seen people really store it. You could just leave it off to the side if you want to, up to you, but the number one way I've seen people store the hook is attach it to the gun. But that is typically how I store all the accessories, but I have to say again, there are so many MechTech ports across this entire figure, and a lot I didn't even use right now. There's some on the back, so really endless options and ways or configurations to store them. But now for some comparisons, here's with another Deluxe from Wave 3 Legacy Evolution, that being Beachcomber, probably one of my favorite Deluxes of the year so far. Highly, highly recommend it, and his review is up on the channel right now. Make sure you go check that out after this one. As for the last remaining Deluxe, that being DevCon, and his review is up on the channel right now as well. And for one final mold comparison, we actually have the original Scrap Hook, and I think they look really cool side by side. So I already did mention, some of the accessories have kind of carried over from Scrap Hook into this figure. As you can see, they both have those little, pipe smokestacks and the little hook weapon. As for new accessories, of course, he actually had the little spinning, blade accessory and the little blasters that store on the front of the legs. Those are different. He also does have that little hook crane piece, which she does not include, but there is some new molding as well. As you can tell, there is a brand new head sculpt. The chest is completely different. The shoulders and the forearms and hands are pretty much exactly the same. There might be some very, very few, differences, but overall pretty much the exact same thing. The entire waist is the same. The top of the legs here, or like where the knees are concerned, those are different. And the entire, front of the feet, the front of the legs, that is all different molding. And if you do want to look, at the side here, there are some similarities, with the wheel placement and stuff. And of course, they all both have some really big heel spurs, which I never really liked. Would have been nice if those were a bit more compact. But as we can see on the back, quite similar. Both have similar backpacks in the back of the legs and arms. But two really cool looking Junkions. I do have to say, I probably will mention this in the final thoughts, I think it was probably too early to have a repaint for the Junkions, because we've only actually had two brand new molded Junkions so far, Scrap Hook and Crash Bar, which are two really good figures, so maybe they should have saved a repaint for a little bit later, because, we've had like sublines and series, some series so far, and they've never really done repaints this early. Usually they'll do a repaint maybe, like 5 figures into a series. It's pretty early. I know there is supposed to be Trash Master, a Voyager class Junkion in Wave 4. Maybe he should have taken Axlegrease's place in Wave 3, and she could have been put to maybe next year or Wave 4, or maybe done like a Selects figure. It just seems too early to have a repaint when they kind of just started this Junkion sub-series. But overall, two really cool figures, and please do let me know of the versions so far, which one is your favorite. I'm pretty sure there is supposed to be a third version of this mold coming out. I'm actually not entirely sure what it was called, but I'm pretty sure there is supposed to be a third version coming soon, like the Buzzworthy Bumbley line, so you can put that in the comments if you want to. I've not gotten that in yet, so I'm not really going to consider that right now. But of the two, I probably have to say I might prefer Axlegrease's deco over scrap hooks, but tolerances are definitely better on scrap hook. But that is pretty much it for this mode. Let's now get down to transformation. So now for transformation, what you want to do is rotate the waist all the way around like that. Then you're going to untab the shoulder from the chest. There is tabs on the shoulders and slots where the head is or where the chest is. And just hinge the arm and shoulder all the way up like that. Then you're going to flip to the back, open up these compartments or panels. Back here, there's corresponding tabs and slots. That's how they're connected together. Then you're just going to flip those panels out like that. You're going to hinge the foot up to form the front of the truck. Do the same thing on the other side with the other foot. Hinge that up, tab it into place, and then you're going to tab both halves of the truck together to form the full front like that. Then what you're going to do is actually just hinge this entire chest piece down like that. Then you're going to flip the head in and down, and this will actually form, the entire midsection of the truck, and this is going to tab to the front of the truck itself like that. Then you're going to hinge the shoulders and arms all the way up like that just to get some extra space. Go to the bottom, there is a slot and tab. Just tab that together like that. Just make sure that aligns. There we go. So for this entire back section, definitely my least favorite part of the transformation, especially for Axlegrease and my version of Axlegrease. So the tolerances on my copy anyway are not the best. The forearms pop off pretty much all the time, even when I'm not transforming it. When I'm just putting it into a pose, they pop off so much. So really bad tolerances. Also, just this entire transformation for the arms is really not that good. They do not give you enough space or clearance because they actually expect you in the instructions to transform both arms at the same time, and there's just not enough space or clearance. So I do apologize if this part of the transformation isn't the most clean or smooth. It might be a bit, chunky and a bit wobbly, and I might have to take some stuff off and maybe tap some stuff back on because, again, as I said, a lot of parts of the arms just pop off randomly. So let's get into it. So what you want to do is actually rotate at the forearms like that, and then rotate at the hands like that. There we go. And what they pretty much expect you to do is actually transform both arms at the same time. So there is a tab on the inside of the forearm, and there is a slot on the inside of the shoulder. And of course, the same goes for the other arm. And you're just kind of expected to do both at the same time, which is quite tricky to do and not mess it up. So you're just going to carefully fold both arms in at the same time like that. And then you're just going to tab both of them together. As you can see, there is kind of a cutout on this side, and there's a slot on that side, and there's also a tab and slot on the inside. So it tabs in a lot of different ways. Just get all that together, and surprisingly enough, everything actually stayed on, which is pretty crazy. So then you're going to, as the last few steps, you're just going to get these panels on the side. There is a slot there and a tab on the inside of the leg, like that. There we go. And that is pretty much it for the transmission, but not for the truck mode. It is actually very incomplete. So I'm actually going to show the accessories and how they store in the truck now. Then we will take a look at the details. So for the accessories, there is a ton, because of course this is a junkyard. So there is a lot of accessories, and there's a lot of different ways how you can store them. Because as you can see, there is MechTech ports on the side. There's some on the wheels. There's some on the front hood there. There's some on the back. So there's really pretty much many ways you can store them. I'm actually going to show you how you store them according to the instructions and according to Hasbro, because that's actually my preferred way of doing it. But again, your toy, you can pretty much do whatever you want with them. You can leave some accessories off, you can put some on, really just up to you. So how I'm going to do it is I'm actually going to start off with these really cool exhaust pipes or huge kind of smokestacks. You store them on the side with the same post and port system. Just store them back there like that. Same thing on their side. As for the entire, front hood, as you can see, there's this huge open gap here. You're going to get these two blasters, which actually form this huge kind of engine piece, which is super cool. You actually tab them together. There is tabs and slots. Just tab them together like that. Can be very hard. There we go. And there is two posts and two ports, and that just forms this huge kind of engine block piece on the front, which looks really cool. You can just imagine huge flames shooting out from the side, which looks awesome. As for these last three accessories, they actually all tab together. So there's two identical blasters, and you just tab them together like that. Can be a bit tricky. There we go. Just tab them together. And there is two posts here, and there is two ports. And that's how that connects. And as for the last one, there is this little hook, which you can technically put it in either port. Really does not matter, just up to you. And you can just plug this on there like that to fill in this gap for the back part of the truck. And there we have all the accessories on Axlegrease Inner Truck mode. Let's take a look at the details. Here we have Axlegrease in her truck mode. Let's take a look at the details. Starting at the very front, we have some really cool gunmetal gray for this front grille section of these spikes, with some metallic blue for the headlights, and this really cool engine block section done in gunmetal gray and silver. I do like these really cool cylinder tube sections attached. Really nice scope work there, and there's some little small spikes done in maroon or kind of a dark purple, and there's some more for the center of the wheel, and there's some turquoise to blue for the wheel itself or tire itself, and there's some really nice dark blue for the main hood or kind of front section of the truck. I do like this kind of barred windows done in that really nice dark purplish pink, with some more for this patch here with some really nice nut and bolt detailing. I do like this huge gash or kind of scar on the side with some really nice gunmetal gray around it, and I do like these huge pipes or smokestack. You can imagine some huge flames spitting out of them, which is really cool. Would have been nice if they were blaster piece compatible. Unfortunately, they're not. And that same wheel design repeated on the back, of course, same as the front, with these really cool canisters or kind of oil drums at the back. You can imagine maybe they're storing energon or oil, which is really nice. And I do love this huge hook back here. I do like how there is a ton of MechTech ports for weapon storage, but it would have been nice maybe if they kept that same little blade or kind of wheel blade that came with scrap hooks so they could put it there, because I really don't like this huge exposed port at the back. Of course, you could take another weapon and fill that in. I typically don't use it, but if that wheel was included, I would put it there and that would fill it in, because it just looks a bit odd when that's empty. But a very minor complaint. We have the top, bottom, overall pretty well compact and then really sticking out. Overall rolls really well across the ground. I already did cover accessories and how they store, so now for some comparisons. Here we have Beachcomber and Axlegrease, some wave mates. Here we have DivCon. And last but not least, a mold comparison, that being Scrap Hook. And I think they look really cool side by side. Two very, post-apocalyptic, war-torn, battle-ready trucks, which just looks so crazy to me. Obviously, of course, there is some major differences, like the front of the truck itself. This entire front windscreen section, you can see the entire back of the truck is completely different because there is some newly added accessories. The entire front, engine section on the front is completely different between the two. We do have the same, smokestack sticking out the side, and there's that small little hook as well. So there is some obvious similarities and differences, but look really cool side by side. And as I mentioned before, it would have been nice maybe if they kept that wheel to fill in that MechTech port. Really, that just kind of applies to me because maybe you guys do use that MechTech port for weapon storage. I typically don't with the weapons that we were given, but if this accessory was included, I would put that there because I think that would look really cool in that spot. But overall, two really cool looking trucks. So now for her Evo Fusion gimmick, I'm actually not really going to show it, but I will tell you what it is. It's pretty much the same gimmick that we've seen with Crash Bar and Scrap Hook. You can pretty much pull the figure apart and attach it onto the other, Junkions. The same will go for Trash Master. He might have a special one in his robot mode, but as for Axlegrease, there is no Evo Fusion gimmick for the robot mode. The only one we get is for this mode. You can take pieces from Scrap Hook and attach them to her, and the same goes for Crash Bar. You could take all the pieces of, Axlegrease and attach them onto Crash Bar. I typically don't use that feature, and also I've already shown this gimmick before, so I really didn't think I need to show it again, but that is pretty much it for this mode. Let's now get down to reverse transformation. So what you want to do is just remove all the accessories and put them off to the side. Just remove this huge engine block from the front and just kind of wiggle this accessory from the back off. It can be a bit hard to do, just gotta wiggle it off. There we go, loosen it, and just put that off to the side. So now what you want to do is just untap these panels on the side like that. There is a slot on the inside of the panel, and there is a tab on the outside of the leg. You're going to hinge this entire section up and out like that. And then you're actually going to bring this other panel out like that. You can then flip the head up as well, bring the legs down, disconnect them. You're actually going to push the foot out, which can be very tight. There we go. And then just push the foot out and down like that. Just straighten the legs up, rotate them forward like that. Let me just put the legs down. You can then disconnect the arms like that. And I mentioned this the first time when I transformed it into the truck mode. On my copy, the tolerances are just so bad, so I do apologize. If anything, comes undone or just untabs, I'll just pop it back on. Nothing's broken, just the joints are just so loose, so you just kind of unravel everything. And I actually showed how they tab before, but I'll show it again. So there is a tab on the inside of the form, and there is a slot on the inside of the shoulder. Same goes for the other side. Also, of course, there is a tab on the outside of the form, and there is a slot on the outside of the other arm. And just do the same thing on the other side. Just unravel that and open it up like that. Just fully spread these open like that, and there we go. I'm going to readjust the camera so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. Go to the back and just kind of overlap these panels. As you can see, there are some corresponding tabs and slots, and just hinge this entire chest piece up. And there is tabs on the shoulders and slots where the head is. So just tab that into place. Same goes for the other side. Rotate at the bicep, and then rotate at the hand, like that. Same goes for the other hand, and just quickly straightening her up. That is pretty much it for reverse transformation. Let's now get down to the final thoughts. So now for the final thoughts for the Transformers Legacy Evolution Wave 3 Deluxe Class Axlegrease. This figure is overall really good, but it is a must-buy. That's kind of up for interpretation. So a part of Legacy Evolution Wave 3, there is 3 Deluxes, Beachcomber, DevCon, and Axlegrease. If I had to pick one, Axlegrease would probably be my last option. I do have to say probably the other two are a must-buy. This is a good figure on its own, just in comparison, not nearly as interesting. I also do think it's way too early to do some repaints for the Junkion subline or series. There's been 2 previous Junkions that are brand new molds. There's been Scraphook and Crashbar. If you don't know, this figure is a repaint retool of Scraphook. Overall on its own, it's a really, really good mold. I just think it's way too early to start doing repaints because we've only had 2 other Junkions and they kind of just started this sort of series or subline or kind of gimmick series, which they're really good figures. They come with a lot of accessories. I think they just should have saved this maybe for a Selects figure, or maybe they should have just saved it for Wave 4. I do know there's supposed to be Trash Master, a Voyager Junkion, our very first one, which looks absolutely awesome. A brand new mold. Really glad with that, but maybe they should have switched places where Trash Master should have been in Wave 3, and maybe Axlegrease could have been saved for last, considering it is a repaint, and they've only actually had 2 before this one, so it just seems like it's a bit too early and it kind of cheap on Hasbro's part. Honestly, I would have been fine if they saved this for maybe next year. I'm pretty sure the next part of this trilogy is supposed to be like Legacy Universe or something like that, so if they saved it for next year, that probably would have been better, and maybe they could have used the spot for a brand new mold for a Deluxe, or maybe they could have done a brand new Junkion or something else like that, or a new Decepticon. I think that would have been a really good idea. But on its own, I do recommend the figure if you do have space in your collection and some budget. If you have money to buy Deluxe, it is a good figure on its own. Just in comparison to the other Deluxes and the other Junkions, not as good in comparison. But on its own, it is a good figure. I actually really do like all the accessories because, of course, this is a Junkion, so it comes with tons of accessories. If I didn't already mention before, this is a repaint retool of Scraphook, the first Junkion, a part of Legacy Evolution Wave 1. Which the mold is really good articulation. There's actually quite a few new pieces packed in this figure. A brand new chest, brand new head sculpt, some brand new accessories that are different from Scraphook. I do have to say there is some shared accessories like the hook attachment and the 2 kind of pipe or smokestack pieces or flame pieces, whatever you want to call them. Those are the same ones that came from Scraphook, of course. The hook is in a different color though, but those 3 molding wise are the exact same thing. But there is 4 brand new accessories for this figure, which is actually really cool. There's these 2 blasters in the back right here, which actually really like the use of accessories. You would think it'd be pretty hard to store like, 5 or 6 accessories just on one mode, but I think they did a really good job. It actually forms the entire like trunk or back of the truck, and these front 2 blasters actually form the entire, front engine block, which I have to say the painting and the molding for that front engine block is amazing, and how it actually transforms into 2 separate blasters for the robot mode is so creative and cool. I do have to say for the back 2 blasters that form the trunk, I do like the creativity and the use of the weapons, but definitely could use some more paint because it's just kind of that very plain, simple, dark gray plastic. It would have been nice maybe if they actually painted it in like gunmetal gray, or maybe had some silver or something, because as it is, they're kind of boring in comparison, especially to the other blasters. But the truck itself overall is really cool. I love the playability options. Of course, you can pretty much completely swap out all the accessories. This is, of course, how I'm storing the accessories according to the instructions and according to Hasbro, but there are so many mech tech ports. There's some on the sides, there's some of the actual wheels, there's pretty much everywhere, so you can really combine, and you can leave some accessories off to the side. Really up to you how you want to store these. I do like this truck mode, but I have to say getting to it is not the best. The transformation is pretty much the exact same thing as Scraphook, so no surprises there. But I've never really liked the transformation where the arms are concerned. If you did watch the actual transformation segment, you know what I'm talking about. So the arms, they just didn't do a really good job, especially for this version of the mold. My copy of Axlegrease, the arms have the worst tolerances ever, especially where the forearms are. They pop off a lot. I wouldn't say all the time, but especially when posing, and and transforming the figure back and forth, they pop off quite a bit. So it would have been nice if the joints were better, but overall this main complaint of, the transformation of the arms really isn't specific to Axlegrease. It's pretty much just the scrap hook mold in general. There's just not enough clearance and space. They pretty much expect you to transform both arms and tab them together at the exact same time. All the while, of course, just my luck, the arms are super loose and pop off all the time. So definitely not the most fun part of the transformation. But for the rest of the part, the chest, the head, and the legs, overall really fun. The exact same thing as scrap hook. Never had a problem with that. It just would have been nice if the tolerance was better, and I think they probably should have thought through the transformation of the arms a little bit better, because it's really, fiddly, just not very easy to do, and a lot of stuff untabs and pops off. As for the Robo Mode, as I mentioned, of course, it is a repaint, retool of scrap hooks. So there is a brand new head and chest, and there's a few other new molded pieces where the legs are concerned and the feet. But as for the shoulders and arms, those are pretty much the exact same thing. Also the waist and the top of the legs, that's also pretty much the exact same thing. And as I mentioned, there is a ton of accessories. You can store them and display them pretty much however you want. There's so many combinations and ways that you can do. Again, I typically just go by the instruction booklet in the box because I typically think it looks the best. That's just my opinion anyway. But again, you can really do whatever you want. There are so many combinations with these accessories, really endless. But articulation is pretty much the exact same thing as scrap hook. No surprises there. As I mentioned with the arms, really loose joints, but everything else, the tolerances, the head, the legs, no problems there. Articulation overall, putting the loose joints off to the side, no problems where the arms are concerned. There is a wrist rotation, waist rotation, ankle pivot, which is always really good to see. Overall, I do highly recommend this figure, but I do have to say again, this is, I wouldn't say a must buy for some people. If you are in a limited budget, or if you do not have a ton of space in your collection, if you're only buying, I would say, the best figures of like Legacy Evolution and Studio Series, I highly recommend to get, if you only could get one deluxe of Wave 3, I would highly recommend to get Beachcomber. He's definitely probably one of the best deluxes I've gotten of 2023 so far. But if you do have the space, and maybe if you happen to find them on sale, or maybe at Target or somewhere, I do recommend to get it. It is a very good figure on its own, just in comparison to some other ones, not nearly as interesting. I hope you enjoy this review, and I will see you next time.